Since the mid-1990s, Pokemon has fallen on the list of most recognizable brands in the Japanese entertainment industry. With the video games branching off into various pieces of media and collectibles, one of which being the famous trading card game. More recently, I started playing one of my favorite Pokemon games of all time again, a spin-off of the main series that features the TCG. Staying close to the winning formula of the main series entries, the goal is to collect 8 Master Medals from club leaders, defeat the Grand Masters in the Pokemon Dome, and acquire the legendary Pokemon cards to use in your arsenal. Seems pretty simple. So simple, a normal player can finish the game in just a few sessions, given that they can pick up on the ins and outs of the TCG. However, the speedrunning community does this much faster, to a point where something like this can happen.
4 minutes. I think we got 4 minutes flat.
Let's ruin our childhoods by diving into how speedrunners beat this underplayed gem in under 4 minutes, using an incredible trick that was found completely by accident. Before we dive into the mechanics of the glitches we're covering, subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out, and it tells me what content you want to see in the future. Over the course of 9 years of recorded speedrun history for the game, most of it has been spent taking on the challenge in a more traditional manner. From Anise Lowell's 2011 Speed Demos Archive feature run, all the way to AJ's glitchless 48-minute and 13-second completion on June 3rd of 2019. So how do we get from there to all the way down here? Well, in January of 2020, the community would get some help from an unlikely source. In speedrunning, there's the side that you see 99% of the time. Players attempting to improve times while streaming to a live audience is the most popular method of the hobby, but there's another, more technical part of the community that many will never know about. Tassing, or tool-assisted speedrunning, involves meticulously playing a game frame by frame to achieve the fastest time possible. This is typically done through an emulator and uses pre-recorded inputs set by the player. This not only allows for frame-perfect button presses, but the inputs allow for other functions as well. For example, the inputs can be saved as a file and sent to others for something called a playback. This playback of the exact inputs lets people verify the task is legitimate, but more importantly, it can also be used for collaboration between other taskers. This brings us to two of our runners, Interpenter and GIFVEX, both being veteran members of the Pokemon speedrunning community, with GIFVEX notably having a hand in the Pokemon Blue task and other massive technical accomplishments. They wanted to do a playback of an older task from a runner named Anonymous User on actual console. This is a complicated process that involves dumping the task inputs, making a bot that acts as a controller for these inputs, and having a script that runs said inputs. Making a task playback work on console is incredibly difficult, and mostly results in a desync due to how consoles handle inputs compared to emulators. This means that the inputs on console won't register on the same frames they would for emulator, and the task can't be completed. These things tend to not go right the first time, and that was the case for Anonymous User's task. While this was an unfortunate wall for Interpenter and GIFVEX, they let the inputs play to the end and observed something very odd. The inputs let the run get through the game's tutorial, but the desync left the task stuck through the tutorial fight. However, after about 20 minutes in, the game randomly exited the tutorial, and the player went on to select a starter deck. The initial theory from Interpenter was that the tutorial had a time limit, but that was quickly dismissed as GIFVEX identified the quirk as a side effect from a previously unknown glitch. This glitch was called down plus A. If you go to the play area screen and put your cursor on the lowest possible position on the player side, a down plus A input on the same frame will execute a glitch that exits the duel. The simple reason why this works is thanks to the cursor going out of bounds for a frame, and using an A press on the exact same frame executes specific values that are not meant to be read as data. Normally, when you try to move the cursor out of bounds, the game records the current cursor position and checks button presses. If nothing is pressed, then the cursor just returns to the same place it was before attempting to move it. If the A button is pressed, it overwrites the recording of the previous cursor position with a routine called Open in Play Area Screen Selection, and uses something called a jump table based on where the cursor position is. To keep it simple, this is what usually lets you jump to different screens after selecting something in the Play Area screen. There's a specific range of values that are referenced when this happens, so if you use a value that's outside the range of the intended set, It will run through different parts of the game's memory until the game finds something it can execute. In this case, the game jumps through different parts of memory containing things like move animation data and text data until ending up at a point where it can actually execute something usable. From there, the game continues to find a specific script and exits the duel using the win-loss result from the previous match. With the tutorial, you exit the duel with the win as that is the default value for the game. This was massive because of a couple reasons. Over the last several years before this find, Realtime and tool-assisted speedrunners were both looking for ways to skip the game's 7-minute tutorial. Anonymous User's 2017 task that was the progenitor of this glitch complained about this fact in the author's notes section, so this was something that was clearly sought after. Now this was huge, but this glitch didn't just work in the tutorial. No, it worked on every required duel in the game. This meant that the game could be completed without having to win a single duel. Even better, this glitch was viable in a real-time setting, meaning the biggest gold rush in the community's history was about to happen. GiftVex and Enterpenter shared this find with the community in the middle of January 2020, and what came next can only be described as a mad dash from several runners to reach new heights in the game's newly made any% glitch category. In a matter of 3 days after this find, the game's fastest time went from a 48:13 all the way down to a 13:36 by AAA. The game being completed in 13 minutes is an incredible feat, but this is 9 minutes away from the time I promised you all earlier. So the question we have now is what could possibly be faster than instantly winning every duel in the game? GiftVex and Enterpenter knew that if code could be executed using one part of the game's memory to win a duel, something much bigger could be on the horizon, and it wouldn't take them long to figure out what that big discovery could be. It was found that the down+A glitch did more than just let players escape from duels, and here's where things get a little more complicated. The duo noted instances when doing the glitch where the player would become stuck on a weird infinite party screen. This is due to a few aspects of randomness from some of the glitch's inherent mechanics, the first of which is a technical term called bank switching. You can think of this as the game jumping through various aspects of its memory after hitting certain points of each bank. When the game switches from bank 06 in this case to bank 17, the game normally wants to call a routine that keeps track of what bank to return to if something called an interrupt occurs. More on that in a second, but even after the bank switch, the routine still has bank 06 as the return point. Referring to what we were talking about earlier, doing the down+A glitch results in a jump to move animation data. When executed as code, it switches the bank to bank 17, or the text data I mentioned earlier. This is just half of the process, because now we get to talk about that interrupt I just mentioned. The game has a mechanic called a timer interrupt handler that increments a value called WTimerCounter. The timer interrupt triggers 4 times every frame, and once that timer counter value is divisible by 4, it will run some extra code. What this code does may sound pretty complicated, but its main job is to count playtime. However, another part of the code updates music, and guess what? That's in another bank. If this happens, the game goes to that bank to run those routines, and then returns back to the bank stored in memory, which is bank 06. So why the heck is this important? There are these 2 CPU halts that happen while in bank 17 on certain values. These CPU halts are points when the game's timer counter value can run that extra code which does the crazy stuff I just mentioned. Normally, we want the game to run past this point during the down-A glitch and do another bank switch to bank 20, which is where all the crazy glitches start to occur. Okay, is everyone with me? Because I'm about to blow your mind. What this means is the trick has nearly a 50% chance to just fail randomly and cause the infinite party screen to happen. I say nearly 50% because there's also some other stuff that can happen that's literally defined in the technical document as weird shit. But we're not going to dive into that today. Now that you know how hard this trick is, let's talk about the aspect that really matters. After a ton of testing, GiftVex found something interesting that can happen if specific criteria are met. In battle, there's an effect that can hit the player which basically switches out the active Pokemon with the Pokemon on the bench. This can be one of a few moves, but the important one we're going to focus on is Whirlwind. If you have 2 Pokemon in the play area, the game will have you select the replacement Pokemon, and this is where things start to break. Hitting select twice in this menu to go back into the play area and then doing the down plus A glitch in this situation will cause the game to eventually bank switch back from bank 20 to bank 06. And then this returns an address of C300. This C300 return address is only possible due to several addresses being shifted in association with the Whirlwind ability and glitches that just occurred. Now this memory address isn't entirely important by itself, but the memory address of C400 right near it contains something very interesting: the contents of the player's deck. Most of the aspects of the game's memory we've executed as code up until this point were not really controlled by the player. This is where things get really good. If you edit your deck in a certain way prior to this situation happening, it can be set up to safely execute that data as code, which ends up being a credits warp. All of this was put into a workable document on January 24th, 2020, and a task was quickly submitted just 5 days after that by GIFX. Just a couple days after that, GIFX brought the tech to the realm of mortals and showed a demo run to the community with a credits warp in real time. This route would be a little bit slower than a task, but the idea is the Dual Science Club member Joseph after doing a specific deck setup for the ace. In order to do this properly though, there was one last piece of the puzzle runners needed to implement. In the game, there's an RNG value that starts from a set point and constantly changes in a predictable manner from a soft reset. If timed properly with the start of Joseph's duel, you can ensure specific cards are played and moves are chosen. In particular, we want Joseph to play Pidgey on his first turn and use Whirlwind to set up the ace for the credits warp. The results of this would cause yet another subcategory split and make any percent ace into a new beast that runners would quickly take on. However, this would be short-lived as it only took a week to see attempts at the new record fizzle out. With the game coming down to getting the down plus A glitches and Minute first try, no one wanted to torment themselves any longer than they had to. Many felt that the spirit of the game lay within the longer categories such as glitchless and all cards. So after OOO AJ's final ace record of 3 minutes and 24 seconds, the competition for that category was buried 6 feet under, and that was the end of it. At least for the most part. GIFX would leave a final parting gift for the community on June 10th of 2020. One final task that used one of Mason's lab members to do the same code of execution off of Rhyhorn's ability. This task would finish with a time of 2 minutes and 55 seconds, with it being the very last tool assisted speedrun submitted by GIFX to this day. It's incredible to see how a single accident could spawn such a game-changing glitch, upending the very idea of how fast the Pokemon trading card game could be completed. The hard work and research of just 2 people brought the game down by about 45 minutes in the matter of a couple weeks after the discoveries were made. And while many runners stick to the glitchless category these days, the ability to beat the game in just 3.5 minutes is at their fingertips. If you have a copy of the game, try it out yourself and tell me if you're able to do the down plus A glitch I just showed off in the comments below. A quick note before we end the video. I want to extend a special thank you for my patrons who support me on Patreon. They've allowed me to increase my production quality through both equipment and software upgrades. And these videos as they are wouldn't be possible without their help. Anyways, stay hydrated folks, and thanks for watching.